How's it going, folks? You're very welcome to today's Leaving Cert History lesson, where we are going to look at how to answer the documents-based question on the Leaving Cert paper. So the documents-based question, guys, is split into 4 sections. You've got comprehension questions, comparison questions, criticism questions, and contextualization questions, okay? And the first 3 sections, so comparison, comprehension, comparison, and criticism, are worth 20 marks each. And the final contextualization question is worth 40 marks each. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go through how to break down these questions, how to answer them, what to look out for, and some little tips here and there on how you can maximize your marks. Okay, so the first section is the comprehension section, and this is the simplest section by far. Okay, so these questions are simply designed to test your understanding of the document. So this, guys, is basically it's a basic reading comprehension. Okay, some examples of questions include what is meant by, in document A, mention 2 ways that something happens. What is the message of the cartoon in document B? Okay, so it's your ability to I suppose analyze a document, whether it be an article or a cartoon, and answer questions relating to that document. Very, very straightforward, okay? And, these are the simplest parts of the documents-based question to answer. Now, to answer these questions, very, very straightforward. What do you need to do? Well, the first thing you need to do is underline the relevant parts in the extract, okay? So when you read your questions and then go to read your extract, underline any parts in the extract that relate to any of the questions, okay? Give full answers. Again, guys, it's such a simple one. Don't be given half a sentence. Give a full answer. You can never write too much in this. Don't be afraid to waffle even, okay? And a big important one there is a quote from your documents, okay? So if you're making a point, you must give a quote to support this point, okay? So make your point, give a quote to, support it, and then explain what you mean. So PQE, point, quote, explain. Very, very straightforward, okay? And they're the most straightforward part of the documents-based question asked. Is the first question, the comprehension-based question, and you shouldn't really have any problem with that, okay? So some simple things to remember: use full answers, always quote from the document, and then explain the quote and explain your point, okay? Very, very straightforward. The second part of the documents-based question is a comparison section. And what you have to do here is basically compare 2 documents, okay? You do this by looking for similarities or differences in each document. Very, very straightforward. And examples of this, or of these kind of comparison style questions, could be, how does document A differ from document B in relation to something? Does document A support or contradict something? Which document is more sympathetic to? So which document is kind of leaning towards, whatever side? Which document agrees or disagrees with? And how do the documents differ in their interpretation of? Okay, very, very straightforward, guys. Again, you're comparing, looking for similarities, looking for differences, looking for any kind of bias or any way a document supports or is against a particular historical moment or whatever the topic may be on, okay? To answer these questions, again, guys, really, really simple tip: underline the parts of the text used for answering the question. So when you read your questions and then go and read your text, underline any part of the text that has any wording that's related to your questions, okay? If it's a cartoon, so sometimes it's a cartoon, again, if this is the case, circle or highlight any key aspects of that cartoon, whether it be a speech bubble, whether it be what the person in the cartoon is doing. And the most important thing in this, guys, is refer to both documents in your answers and compare them, okay? So, don't just say document A is different to document B because document A says this, okay? You must refer to both documents. So document A differs to document B. Document A says this, whereas document B says this. Okay, so refer to both documents and quote them. Okay, again, guys, use quotes when you're referring to both your documents. Okay, so it's a comparison. They're asking you to compare. They're not asking you just to give the point of view of one document. You must compare them properly. And to do this, you must give quotes from both documents and give a viewpoint from both documents in your answer. Very, very straightforward, but again, some people forget to do that and lose out on marks as a result. The third section in the documents-based question is a criticism section, okay? And basically in this, you're looking for any sign of weakness or unreliability in any of the sources, okay? So in this section, you have to identify bias, propaganda, and comment on the reliability of sources, okay? So, comment on how good something is as a historical source. An example of some criticism questions include: do you find bias in either document? So, bias is a big one of these questions, guys. So you must understand what that is. Okay, you must understand what, I suppose, historical concepts are. For example, bias, propaganda, reliability. So, for example, bias, showing favor towards one viewpoint. Okay, you must be able to identify that. Is one document favoring one viewpoint? What are the strengths and weaknesses of this document as a historical source? So, again, what would the strengths and weaknesses of a document be? Well, is it a primary source? Who wrote the document, or where does it come from? Like, does it come from somebody who was there at the time? Does it come from somebody who might be a bit biased? Is the document a primary or secondary source? Mention one strength and one weakness of document A. So there's an example of some of the questions that can come up in section 3 on criticism. Okay, now to answer these, again, guys, very, very straightforward. The first thing you must do is you must be familiar with the key historical concepts. You must be able to recognize what bias is, propaganda, and to judge the reliability of various sources. So you must be able to practice that. Like, if you went into this question and you didn't know what bias meant or propaganda meant, how could you answer it? Okay, so you must understand what the key historical kind of terms are in relation to source reliability. Okay. You need to look out for a fact, opinion, unbalanced view, and source reliability. So, is something factual? Is it actually fact? Did it definitely happen? Is something merely somebody's opinion? So, is a document like a diary entry, and a fella is just saying, "Oh, if he says I think that was great, or I think that was bad, or I think this should have happened," that's opinion, and that's not going to be reliable. Okay, unbalanced view: are you only given the viewpoint from one side of the story, or are you only kind of getting the viewpoint favoring one side of the story? And source reliability: where did the source come from? Is the source a reliable primary source, or is it a source, a cartoon from a tabloid newspaper? Okay, so you must be able to identify what's a good source and what's a bad source. Okay. Again, guys, very, very straightforward. The final piece of, final tip here is to use evidence and quote from each document in your answer. Okay, so if you're criticizing any document, sometimes when you're criticizing a document, you're also comparing them. So you're saying, document A is strong because, and you might give a quote, whereas document B is weaker or is biased because, and you might give a quote. So it's kind of similar to the comparison section. Quote from both documents. Okay, always quote. If you make any point in any of these sections, always give a quote to back up the point you just made. Okay, otherwise, you're kind of just, you could be making something up off the top of your head. All right. Now, the final section is the section that's worth 40 marks, and this is the contextualization question. And guys, this is basically your overall understanding of the context of the situation. So this is designed to test your overall understanding of the period and the background from which the document is taken from. Okay, so for example, if we go back to our very beginning, let's look at the very bottom there. Okay, question 4: does the Jarrow March accurately represent conditions throughout Britain in the 1930s? Well, the Jarrow March, guys, is basically when a group of guys who'd been laid off because of government policy marched from town of Jarrow to London, basically with a petition to seek government help and to try and convince the government to set up a new industry in Jarrow that would employ them. Okay, and I suppose the town of Jarrow was under, in a really, really bad economic depression. Okay, and the question here you're being asked is: does the Jarrow March actually represent conditions throughout Britain in the 1930s? So was all of Britain, I suppose, going through an economic depression at the time? Okay, so to answer a question like that, you have to have a good understanding of the context of the situation. Okay, what was going on in that place at that time? All right, so examples of these questions could be: how did something deal with the difficulties of? What impact did something have during this period? And what was the importance of? Okay, so the contextualization question, guys, is basically a mini essay. Okay, you're looking to write about 2 A4 pages in this. Okay, so to answer this question, you need to have a good understanding of the historical context of the question being asked. So you need to have a good understanding of, say, in case of the Jarrow March, what was the economic situation throughout all of Britain in the interwar period? For example, a World War II question: what was the situation in Europe regarding fascism, communism, democracy in the build-up to World War II? Okay, so you must have a good overall understanding of what the historical context was like at the time period. Okay. Keep to the question being asked. That's an important one, guys. So again, you're not going to get marks for talking about something that happened 20 years later or something that is completely irrelevant. So keep to the question being asked, and that's a simple one, but it's very, very straightforward. This is the first kind of big chunk of writing you're going to do in your exam. So approach your answer like a mini essay. Okay, and what I mean by that is, put in an introduction. You're writing 3 or 4 paragraphs and a conclusion, and this should come to about 2 A4 pages in total. Okay, so plan your contextualization question. Okay, like you'd plan any essay. So do a spider diagram, whatever little way helps you to kind of write your essays. Okay, so for example, for the Jarrow March, you could have Jarrow March, and you could do spider's legs, and you can be putting in, what was the situation like economically for people in Britain. You're putting in your examples of the places going through a depression, a lot of the a lot of industrial revolution, kind of industries were being shut down. There was a lot of unemployment, and this, you can plan this like it's a proper essay, guys. Okay, so folks, that's all for our document-based questions. Any other questions on this, guys? Don't be afraid to drop me a question on the page. Thanks so much for watching.